I've seen videos all over YouTube where people knock on doors of mansions or go up to people at yacht clubs and basically ask them how they got rich.
Your house is gorgeous.
What do you do for a living?
I am Director of Finance at a software company.
What do you do then?
My first career was in finance.
Insurance broker.
And as someone who focuses on real estate, I've always wanted to know how many of those people were involved in property investing. And so today, I'm in this super nice hotel, and I figured there's gotta be some people in here who are real estate investors. So I've decided to just go knocking on some doors. Let's see what we can find. Y'all know I'm lying. This is my room. I'm out of town right now, but I've been working on what is probably the most complex video that I've ever made. From nearly missing international flights, losing my passport, and trying to manage the schedules of 5, 6, and 7-figure investors, this video is one I am so excited about. I've gathered more investors than have probably been in one single video ever, with the sole purpose of each and every one of them telling you how they got their first deal. From multiple different strategies and people being different ages when they started, and some people making money on their first deal to some people losing a bunch of money on their first deal. This is a motivating and inspiring video, and I'm so excited at how it has come together for you guys. So let's just go ahead and get started.
My name is Tony J. Robinson. I'm a real estate investor, YouTuber, podcaster, educator in the world of real estate investing. My wife and I started investing in short-term rentals a little over 2 years ago. Right now, we've scaled to 20 active Airbnbs across a couple of states. We've got another 10-ish properties that are under contract and rehab being built out. So we'll be at 30 properties here, hopefully by the end of the year. And then I run probably like the third biggest YouTube channel when it comes to Airbnbs. So the Real Estate Robinsons on YouTube. So you guys can check us out there as well. I got my first deal back in 2019, October 23rd, 2019. And it was a single family house, 3-bed, 2-bath. And it was in Shreveport, Louisiana. I live in Southern California, so it was thousands of miles away from where I live. And the reason I went to Shreveport, Louisiana was my mom actually retired there. So she lived in California. When she retired, wanted to make the retirement dollar stretch, so she moved to Louisiana. And they paid, I think, like $30,000 for the house. We're talking Louisiana, small Midwestern or Southern state. They spent like another, I don't know, like 40 grand to fix the house up. And then it appraised for $100,000, right? So they're all in for like 65, 70. The house is worth 100 grand. I'm like, okay, those are decent numbers. And so mom, like, how did you guys pay for this? And she said, hey, there's actually this credit union that covered everything. They covered the purchase price. They covered the rehab costs. They covered the closing costs. She's like, we actually got a small check at closing back to us when we bought this property. So I said, mom, can you make an introduction for me? And she introduced me to this bank. And I have some conversation with them and said, hey, was this like a one-off thing, or will you guys give this to anyone? And they're like, as long as you can find the right deal, we'll give this loan to anybody. So that's what I did. I started looking, found a good property, connected with the bank, and they funded the entire project for me.
And when they said like the right deal, right? Because like your mom's in for 70, it appraised for 100, like on the front side, what does that look like? Like what was in your mind? Like, okay, I need to go find this thing.
They said that the purchase price and the rehab had to be 72.5% of the after repair value or less. So that was all I needed. I just needed the framework, the guidelines, and I was out there just looking for deals.
So you're looking for like a loan to value or LTV. You said 72.5?
That's what they told me, 72.5.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, that still leaves, so much room for equity and all that. But that's really cool. Okay, so you went out and I'm guessing you found a deal 72.5 LTV or less.
Yeah, so I ended up finding a property. I want to say it was like $100,000 on the nose is what I picked it up for. Put about another like 60 grand into the rehab, maybe a little bit more. I can't remember exact numbers these days. But once it was done, that property appraised for $230,000. So I was all in for like 165. ARV was 230. I met those requirements that the bank had. They literally covered the entire cost of purchasing and renovating that property. I refinanced out of that construction debt about 6 months into owning the property. Found a property manager. They found the tenant for me, and I was cash flowing a whopping $150 every single month off of that one property. So again, not life-changing money, but it was proof of concept, and it was all I needed to really fall in love with real estate investing. So I'm sitting on some capital that I had set aside, and a buddy of mine says, "Hey, Tony, I know you're thinking about this apartment syndication thing, but I'm buying this cabin, this Airbnb in Tennessee. Here are the numbers on it. I think you should come take a look at this." And when he showed me the numbers, I was like, holy crap. I was like, you're getting this with one property? And remember, at the time, I was making $150 on this, per month on this one single family house. He was going to make $150,000 in gross revenue with this one cabin. I was like, holy crap. So we ended up buying that first cabin in the Smoky Mountains. And it was right in the middle of COVID. This was 2020. So people thought we were crazy for buying a vacation rental at a time when no one was traveling. And, in hindsight, either we were crazy or lucky, or maybe a little bit of both. But that turned out, Lili, to be the best deal we ever did. We bought that property. $590,000 was the purchase price. Our all-in cash investment, down payment, closing costs, everything was about 65 grand. We profited in the first 12 months just over $85,000 in that property. And it turned into a 138% cash on cash return with that one deal. So that was like all the verification validation I needed to know that Airbnbs and investing in short-term rentals was what I wanted to do moving forward.
So I'm chilling downstairs at the hotel, and I realized that me and Jamil's conversation went completely. Whoa. I have no idea what happened with that clip, but what I was about to say is two things. First up, I know you guys are interested because you're watching this video in getting your first deal, and I was able to work with one of the investors you're gonna hear from soon to get you guys a huge discount on an opportunity for a 30-day challenge to get your first deal. The link's gonna be in the description. Check that out once this video is over. Second, me and my guy Jamil just got lost in conversation, and one, I forgot to have him introduce himself, but two, we talked for so long and had such a good conversation, it inspired me to start my own podcast. And so while this is just a quick snippet, that full conversation is actually going to be the first unofficial podcast episode on my new channel. That's also going to be linked in the description. So after this, you've got some more stuff to watch. Let's go.
My business partner and his father, they were just saying, "No, Jamil, there's no place for you here. You don't have any funds to bring to the table. You're not a realtor, so we can't have you list the properties. You really don't have a place here." And as I'm listening to them talk, I hear them lamenting that they just need more building lots. They're like, if we could only find more building lots, we would make so much more money. So that's when I saw an opportunity, and I asked, well, what's a building lot and how do I possibly find you one of those? And they explained the parameters. They said, we need a house that got R2 zoning that has a minimum of a 50-foot frontage and 100 feet in depth. And if you can find something like this, we'll buy it from you, or we'll buy it. So the next day, I'm walking my dog, and I live in a neighborhood where they do this, where they knock down old houses and they build duplexes, and I see construction evidence all around me. Now I'm paying attention, right? I hadn't paid attention before, but now I know what I'm looking at. So I call the lady, and I ask her, I said, look, I noticed your house is for rent. It's been for rent for a while, but I just asked her if she'd be interested in selling instead of renting the place. And her answer was, yeah, absolutely, for the right number. And I asked what that number was. She said $350,000. So I'm like, okay. I go to the office and I ask my business partner, what would you and your dad pay for a house in this neighborhood, on this street, max? Like, what's the maximum you guys could pay? So I know. And they said 400 all day. And so now I have a $50,000 problem to solve because I don't have any money. I don't have any way to do this deal. And I've never heard of wholesaling. It doesn't exist in my world. And especially in Canada, like that, the entire business model is foreign there. And it's so long ago that it hadn't become cool yet either. Right. And so there's this whole interesting time. So I do what I know how to do, which is cold call. Right. So I pick up the phone book and I start cold calling lawyers, and I get a hold of an attorney. I get all the way to the letter S, and an attorney by the name of David Steed changed my life because he explained to me this process called a skip transfer. In Canada, they call it a skip transfer. And he laid it out to me so magically. And he explained that I just needed two contracts. One contract where I was the purchaser of the house at $350,000, and a second contract where I was the seller of the house for $400,000. I needed to get all the signatures on those documents, and I needed to bring the contracts to him. And 2 weeks later, there was a check for $47,800 and change waiting for me at his office. And so there's this fourplex that was for sale, And I realized that there was another fourplex beside it, and another one beside it, and another one beside it, and another one beside it. And so I thought, hey, how cool would it be if I got them all under contract? But now I assembled 4 acres in an incredibly pop-in part of Phoenix. And I think, yes, I'm gonna knock it out of the park on this. So I have the contracts on all of these, and immediately a home builder comes and says, I'll give you $100,000, wholesale this to me, and let me handle it from here. And my business partner at the time said, not a chance, Jamil. Let's not do that. Let's go get this land rezoned, and let's go get entitlements. Let's go subdivide it and get these subdivided into individual lots, and then let's sell the entitled property off to a builder, because we'll add so much more value to the land. And to me, that instinctively, that makes sense, right? Land development is the process of rezoning and then entitling property and then selling it off to builders. So I thought, yeah, okay, why should we make 100,000? Let's make $1 million. What I learned is that first and foremost, builders don't want to buy other people's entitled property. Every builder has a product that they want to build, their own product. And that product has to be attached to the entitled land in the end. Like that, an entitled parcel has product attached.
So let me confirm I understand. So like, say I'm a builder who wants to build duplexes.
Yep.
I have to entitle the land in a way that lets me do that, versus another builder who wants to build like a McMansion. They've got to entitle the way they want to do that.
Exactly.
So if you do it, you're severely limiting the buyer pool.
Exactly.
Okay.
To what your idea is of what should belong on that piece of land.
Mm-hmm.
And builders, the way that they roll is they buy all their materials in bulk. They buy their windows in bulk. They buy their roofing in bulk. So they want everything to be the same. They don't even want to have to go and get new plans done. The problem is that process of getting entitlements could be over a year. In this case, it took us longer than that. It was almost 2 years. So my profit margin on paper, if you were to look at the whole thing, if you were to say, hey, Jamil, like you bought it for X number of dollars and you sold it for X number of dollars, like, it looks like you made over $1 million on paper. It does. It looks like I made over $1 million on paper, but in fact, I think I made just over $12. My debt service was so high because I purchased in hard money, and it was an incredibly painful deal for me. Like $12 profit when on paper it says I made near $1 million. That's crazy town.
My name is Sam, a real estate investor. I've been investing in real estate since about 2015. I'm in St. Louis. That's where I own all my properties and do all my flipping. So I own a house buying company that's going to flip about 300 houses this year, mostly wholesale with some fix and flips in there. Then I own $40 million worth of real estate, about half houses and about half apartment complexes, and then some self-storage facilities as well. So my very first deal was a BRRRR deal. It was a rental property, a single family house. I actually bought it with the plans to fix it up and sell it. I didn't know about the BRRRRs at the time. I thought you had to put 20% down on every rental like most people did. So I'm like, I don't have the 20% in my checking account, and I don't think my wife would let me do it anyway. So let me flip a house with a private lender and take that profit and put it, 20% down on another rental property. So I thought, all right, for every one rental I'm going to buy, I'm going to have to buy 2, one to flip and one to profit, and then, to put down. But during that process, I learned about the refinance of the BRRRR method and learned out about 80% cash out refinances, and ended up keeping that property, and I still own it to this day. So I've owned it for about 7 years now, and it's a very good case study of the power of real estate and the growth that property's had in value over 7 years and all that kind of stuff. So it was a good first one to have.
Yeah. So what was the situation like with your private lender? How did you find them? And then you didn't have the money, so what did they provide?
Yep. So the private lender was somebody that I had known for a few years. I graduated college in 2011, and our first deal was 2015-ish. So he knew my parents. He was a local business guy, and we had talked over the years about, just his business and how I always wanted to be an entrepreneur and all that. We just had talk and got to know each other pretty well. And me and my business partner, Lucas, mentioned that we were wanting to get into real estate and we were looking for a lender. We ended up giving him just a pretty much simple 12% return on the deal, you know, annualized for his money. So he gave us the money, he gave us 100 grand. We used 99 of it. So for the purchase and rehab, we used 99 of that 100 grand. And then we did the BRRRR method. And actually we ended up not being able to pay him back fully and ended up rolling the interest return into the next deal, which is an awesome thing about private lenders. If you have a relationship built, you can be flexible. It's not like you have your money or we're foreclosing on you or anything like that. Yeah, we've had some pretty cool deals. My favorite deal is one we're kind of in the process of. It's a 42 pack of houses. So we bought 42 houses in one neighborhood from one seller. It was a landlord that had been acquiring them over the past 30 years. And we ended up getting it under contract for like $83,000 a door. So $3.5 million bucks, and it appraised as is for $5.3 million. So we had $1.8 million in equity off the jump.
My name is Ashley Kehr. I am the co-host of the Real Estate Rookie podcast. I'm based in Buffalo, New York, and that is primarily the market that I invest in. I do the BRRRR strategy mostly, long-term buy and hold rentals. And recently I kind of pivoted to purchasing cabins on land and turning them into short-term rentals. I started investing because I actually started working as a property manager. And I saw what this other investor was doing and I wanted to do that. So I partnered with his son and we purchased our first property.
Now, was that like a traditional house hack where you lived in one of the units, or did you guys just rent out both of them right away?
Yeah, so we just, we each had our own houses at the time and we just bought it as an investment property. We had a very limited mindset, thinking that you could only buy investment property using cash. So my partner, that's why he came on, was he brought in the capital, and then I had the knowledge from being a property manager, and I was the landlord. I handled there was small renovations needed on it. I handled that, and we had our first duplex. Actually, we set it up so that the money he put into purchasing the property, he had a mortgage on it. So we actually paid him out of our company a principal and interest payment every single month. And then he also had 50% of the cash flow, which, looking back at it now, I would never do that deal with anyone else. Like, that was such a sweet deal for him. He didn't have to do anything, and he was getting 5.5% return on his money and 50% of the cash flow, but it got me started, so no regrets.
Do you remember how much your 50% portion of the cash flow was?
About $75.
What's up, guys? Lili from the future. I'm back. Now, one thing I really love about Ashley's story is that it's kind of unconventional in the sense that she didn't go into real estate immediately trying to be an investor. She actually got a job as a property manager. And what that did was it allowed her to learn the ropes of everything that the investor she was working for, what he was doing, but without any of the risk on herself. So once she had that knowledge and experience, she had 2 of the 3 things needed to get a deal done, and she was able to find somebody else to bring in the money.
We negotiated the purchase price to $35,000, I believe it was, and we ended up going to a bank, and we were each getting lines of credit, but they weren't going to close for a while. And we're telling the loan officer about how we had this property we wanted to buy, but our lines of credit wouldn't be closed in time to purchase it. And he said, well, let me look at it. And we had printed out the Bigger Pockets calculator report, presented it to him. And he said, well, how would I give you a 90-day unsecured loan? So you can use the proceeds from that loan to go and purchase the property. And he gave us the loan for exactly what we needed to close on it. And then he said, then you'll refinance with me for a long-term loan. So as soon as we closed on it, we started that refinance process. The property actually appraised for $42,000, and we had bought it for $35,000. So we were actually able to pull out all of our money, and then we each took, I think it was $1,200 extra we each got at the end of the day from the deal. But all we had done was put an $800 refrigerator in one of the units. But I think that's like a huge tool, is like, you don't have to go and rehab properties. You can go and buy properties that are turnkey and just buy them under market value and already have that equity built into it.
My name is Derrick, aka Flipping a House, and I am located in Houston, Texas. This is my primary and honestly only market that I invest in. And I started out wholesaling, but I mean, now we wholesale, we fix and flip, we buy rentals, we're doing Airbnb, and I'm working on new development, and I've started looking for multifamily deals. So my first deal came from a direct mail marketing piece. So this is when direct mail was like a huge thing. And it took me about 6 months to get that. I was targeting probate deals. And after 6 months of going on a lot of appointments, facing a lot of rejection, we finally found a seller that said yes to our price. And my mentor at the time brought a end buyer, and we made $8,000, and we split that 50-50. This is the best $4,000 I ever made.
Nah, I feel you. I made $6,000 on my first deal. Like, you would have thought it was 6 mil.
Right.
You know? Okay, dope. So you mentioned you had a mentor and you did direct mail. That's not free, right? So you had to spend some type of money, whether on the mail, the mentorship. Like, what did your investment leading up to that first deal look like?
Yeah, so I was spending on average around $200 a month. That was my budget, just to print off the letters and do handwriting with the stamps and the paper and everything. My budget was around $200 to $250 a month. Like I said, it took me about 6 months. And my mentor, honestly, and I tell people this all the time, he just kind of came in the picture once I was putting that energy out there, and he saw that I was serious, and I just kept bringing him deals. And eventually, after me bringing like 4 or 5, he saw that I was like really serious. I just didn't know what I was doing. So honestly, I mean, I paid him half of my assignment fee, and I would have gave him the whole thing, to be honest, just to see the process go through. So I would say, I mean, $200 for 6 months, you know what I mean? Maybe $1,200 to get that first deal. So, I mean, well worth the investment. Just took a little bit longer to get it done.
That's a really good point. That $200, you made that from a W-2? Were you like going on appointments outside of your normal day job? How'd you fund it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was waiting tables at the time in City Center here in Houston. I was working at Yard House. So I mean, I made decent, but I was also in college, so I had to carve out the time to do it. But I mean, I used to, whenever I was getting like leads in, I used to leave tables like in the middle of taking their order. Like I was just trying to do whatever it took to get the deal. So I mean, I think when I look at investment, the money was like whatever. It's really the mental, obstacles that I had to overcome, and just being consistent with it, because I feel like a lot of people get started but they're not consistent. And I was like so determined to make this happen, because I hated college and I hated my job. Best deal, I would say, like, we did a $50,000 wholesale, and I just say best deal because that was, I really built really amazing rapport with the sellers. The total time from contract to close was 3 weeks, and it was honestly the easiest deal that I've ever done, which is usually the case. The bigger the deal, the easier they are. The smaller the deal, the bigger the headache.
My name is Benjamin Blackburn. I've been born and raised here in Houston, Texas. 35 years old. Been doing real estate for honestly 6 years, but there's a caveat to that. The first 2 to 3 years I was not consistent at all, so no deal flow, random deals here and there. Only until about 3 to 4 years ago, when I met my partner Derrick, aka Flipping the House, is when I really got consistent and everything. So started out wholesaling. That naturally turned into flipping. We found private lenders, and we realized, there's more meat on the bone. So let's start taking these bad boys down ourselves. And that turned into slowly cherry picking rentals, because that's Derrick and I's, main goal, is that just creating freedom and passive income and building wealth for our families. First, it was a wholesale deal. I was literally cold calling on my lunch breaks. I worked a W-2 job straight out of college. And I found a for sale by owner deal. And it was literally, I don't know if it was a bird dog or a wholesaler, but he was working for another company. Got it for $28,000. Backdoor turned around, sold it for $29,000. So you would think I'd make $1,000, but no, there's other things that happen. 2 days before closing, homeboy says he doesn't want to pay closing costs. So I'm like, you don't want to pay closing costs? Okay, my first deal, I'll figure it out. So I offered to pay half. He was cool. At the closing table, you know, all the junk fees. I guess he didn't look at his side of the HUD. He didn't realize he had to pay some of those fees. He was literally threatening to walk out and just leave. So of course, my first deal, I had to figure it out. So I paid all of his junk fees, and that brought it down to $150 that I made on the deal. But it's crazy because people look at that number, and I still to this, or I used to, like, oh, it's so little, you know, that doesn't even count. But it meant so much to me. You know, I learned the whole process of wholesaling from A to Z. I was fortunate enough to find a title company that walked me through the process, literally. And it was honestly just a blessing in disguise. I still have the check on my wall. So it was nice. I really appreciate that first deal, seriously.
150 big buckaroos.
Yeah, crazy. Should have been 1,000, but had to do what I had to do. So it's all good though. So you would think I would go for the most profitable one, but honestly, it would have to be my first rental that I was able to take down. Because like I said, my ultimate goal, and it's always been my ultimate goal, is to build wealth for myself and my family and just to have passive income, cash flow. Once I got that first rental, it really proved to me like, hey, this stuff is real. You know, everything's really literally paying off and has paid off to get me to this point. And it just felt like that was the first step to actually building real wealth for my family and I.
Do you remember like how much that deal cash flows you?
Yeah, man, that's ironic that you asked me because I was just going through all my rentals yesterday. That specific one is $372. It's actually a Section 8 rental now. It's a 30 rehab, so got it for 100 all in, and it appraised at 166. So yeah, I didn't pull any money out either because I wanted my note to be as small as possible. So
did you just pay yourself back for what you were in for?
100%. Pay my lender off and pay myself back and everything. So it's working out.
Hey guys, my name is Sharad Mehta. I live right outside Toronto, Canada. I am the owner and founder of ReSimpli, the software platform for real estate investors where we help them close more deals with less software. I'm an active investor in Northwest Indiana market right outside of Chicago. We do fix and flip, turnkey properties, rental properties, and I also own some rental properties myself in a property management company. And I'm married with a 5-year-old son and 2-year-old daughter. My very first deal was actually I remember I bought it in August 2010. So I'd been kind of very active on BiggerPockets back then, you know, just learning as much as I could. I read this book, Millionaire Real Estate Investor. So that really inspired me. So I wanted to buy a rental property. So my first property that I bought, I still own that property actually to this date. It's in East Chicago, Indiana. And it was listed on the market for $65,000, I believe. And my whole thought process was, hey, I'm buying my first property. I'm going to be super, super conservative. And, you know, in worst, I'm going to make a low offer at a price that works for me. Even if everything goes wrong, you know, at the price I'm buying, it just makes sense. So I made an offer for $20,000.
Wait, what? 60, listed for 65. You made an offer for 20?
Yeah. So I wasn't kidding when I said I'm going to lowball on this thing. I made an offer 20,000. I believe it got accepted for either 22.5 or 25. I should go back and check, but it was no more than 25,000. So I'm like, this is amazing. Even though it's a great price, I was still nervous. I'm like, oh, I didn't expect this to be accepted, you know, because I made such a low offer. I thought I was just going to offend. I was just trying to get into the habit of making offers, you know, feeling comfortable, but it ended up getting accepted for under 25,000. And it was a 2-unit property. It still is a 2-unit property. It needed about $10,000 worth of work in it. So I was all in roughly about $35,000. And we rented both units for about $1,200 or $1,250 total. So about $600 or $625 each. And I still own that property. Rents for about $1,400 or $1,500 total a month. It was a deal that we bought for $465 or $470, and it was worth. And then we had an offer to sell to somebody for about $510. I should have taken that. You know, I should have wholesaled it, but it was worth about $700. So I think I got a little bit greedy. And then in the market that I invest in, our typical houses that we flip is about 150 to 250. We don't really go above 250. We don't really go below 150. So we bought this. I got a little bit greedy, and then I went outside of my comfort zone. The house was going to be worth about 700, which is definitely high end in the area where we invest. So, but there was, enough margin. It was going to be a 6-figure deal. But when we put it on the market, it was right around the time when the interest rate started going up. And I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good. So we ended up selling it for cash, $575,000 a couple of weeks ago. But, if I factor in all the holding costs, interest, I think I'll end up losing about $30,000 to $35,000. But in the hindsight, it's a very good lesson that I learned, that I have to stay in kind of what my like strength is, just doing those houses at 150 to 200 price point. So it's a good learning lesson. Everybody in my team kind of like, hey, this was not, it was an expensive lesson, but it's going to be something that, we can learn and leverage into the future deals that we buy now. Now with the interest rate changing, the market changing, we're going in, hey, anything over 200 ARV, let's just pass on it. Just simply pass on it. We want to be hyper focused in this 150 to 200 price point. That's unless it's a 2-unit, but for the single family house, I just simply pass it.
My name is Michelle Garabito. This is my boyfriend, Paul Nelson. We're originally from New York, and we originally came from a network marketing background. But right now we're full-time digital nomads, which means we travel full-time. Currently, we're living in Gilbert, Arizona. So we wholesale real estate full-time.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had no real estate background whatsoever when I first started wholesaling. I come from a network marketing background. I ended up leaving that in 2020. So my first ever wholesale deal was what we call a micro flip, where I connected with a partner that actually referred me to join the Astro program, because I was trying to figure out how to do the wholesaling thing and I didn't really know the verbiage. So he referred me to Jamil. And the way that it worked out is he already had a property under contract. This is what the micro flip strategy looks like. He already did what he had to do to get it under contract. And I was in the process of building my buyers list. So at that time I had 150 buyers in Denver. So I wrote a contract with him that gave me the right to market that deal out to my buyers. I marketed out to one of my buyers and he ended up going to see the property. We signed the contract, and 2 weeks later, I closed my first deal, made $15,000. One in Colorado Springs. We got the price down close to 100K under list price, because we do MLS wholesale deals. So we did get it down 100K under list price, and our wholesale fee was going to be 50K. We were ready to close. Everything was ready to go. 2 days before it closes, the buyer was like, hey, I don't think I'm going to hit ARV on this one. Is there any wiggle room on the price? 2 days before we're about to close. So we're like, woohoo, 50K. No, ended up being like 30K after. So after a lot of craziness, I'm putting fires and convincing her, making sure she was okay, and talking to the lender and making sure the agent was good, and making sure that she, we had to double close it, which we usually don't double close our deals. We usually assign it. So then with double closing, we had to put in earnest money on that first file, which was like $12,000. So we're over here like, oh my gosh, we have to do that and this. And then finally it closed on the day before my partner's wedding.
Jerry Norton, and live in Puerto Rico, do my business virtually in the mainland, although now I'm doing a lot of deals here in Puerto Rico. But mostly a flipper. I like to wholesale and fix and flip. I've got a few other development projects that I do as well, but even those are develop and sell. So really like to get in and out of deals. I like to structure deals. I like the short-term aspect of it. I like to make a lot of money as quick as I can and kind of move on. It fits a little bit of my personality, which is kind of, ADD a little bit. So that's just where I've really focused on for about 20 years now, almost 20 years now, mostly wholesaling and flipping. When I first started learning about wholesaling, I went to the cheapest houses I could possibly find in the city, pretty much in the city of Detroit and Metro Detroit, but it was like really low end homes, like $5,000 and $10,000 homes. And that's where I started. And it was great. I part-timed it for about a year. That first deal was very transformational, like most people's first deal. I think it was only $6,000, something like that. It could have been $1 million though, because I was so excited to like do that first deal. And it really was that proof of concept. When I did it, something clicked and I said, I can do this again and again and again. A long time ago, there wasn't a whole lot of tools and resources and technology like there is today, but I was driving for dollars. I saw this tiny little for sale sign in the window and it was faded, like you could barely even see the phone number. And I call on the number and the guy happened to be like in the neighborhood, and he was an investor that had owned it a long time, been vacant a while, was not doing anything with it. So we agreed to a price of $17,000. I had this really simple, like little one-page thing. He signed it. And then I thought to myself, well, man, who am I going to find to flip this? And I had the idea, well, who's buying right now in this neighborhood? So what I did is I went on the MLS. I got my license right away because the MLS was like the only tool available to really find data. And I went on the MLS and I just did a search for like sold homes that sold really cheap in the area. And then I would go on public record and I'd see who it was. Well, I'm doing this like research and I found this guy who had bought like 5 or 6 houses in like the past 30 days, like in the area. And so I didn't know how to find the guy because I didn't even know what skip tracing was. That thing wasn't even available back then. It was like reverse directory. But so what I did is I went and I knocked on the door of one of the houses that he bought, and it was actually a tenant there. And the tenant came out and I said, hey, I'm looking for so-and-so. And he said, oh, that's my landlord. Here's his phone number. So he gives me the phone number. I call him up. He meets me over at the house. And next thing you know, we're doing we go back and forth a little bit, but he wants it. And I end up assigning it to him for $6,000. And what was cool though, is that guy was on like a buying spree, and I ended up over the next couple of years wholesaling him, I don't know, dozens of deals. So he ended up being just an awesome buyer for me. It's only been recently that I've been rethinking flipping on some deals. And so recently I did this deal, and it was a luxury deal. I don't know if you know, I love luxury flipping. So this was in Phoenix and Scottsdale, this deal. And I'm really proud of this deal because I had the discipline to not flip it. And it was a luxury house. I bought it for $1.8 million, and I did $1 million rehab on this house. And like everything, I mean, we blew out walls, we put in headers. I mean, we redid everything, and it's in a luxury area, so it supported that. So I was really excited because I'm all in on this deal for 2.8, right? 1.8 buy, 1 million rehab, all in for 2.8. And it's like a $5 million ARV. And, but if I flip it, this is before I moved to Puerto Rico and kind of took advantage of tax savings. But if I would have flipped it, then I'd owe this huge tax bill, right? Because I'm in the highest tax bracket, so I'd pay about half of that flip in taxes. So, so what I did instead is I said, well, I wonder if there's demand for a luxury renter. And there happened to be a huge demand in that neighborhood, in basically Scottsdale, for luxury tenants. So what I did is I ended up doing a BRRRR, and I ended up refinancing it. It appraised for $4.5 million. The bank gave me an 80% loan to value, which means they gave me a loan for 3.6. But remember, I'm only into the deal for 2.8. So I took an $800,000 cash out, and my new loan, it was an amazing loan before rates went up. It was a 3.5% fixed rate, 30-year loan with like a 10-year balloon. So like my PITI is like, I think 17,000 on that house. And then took 800,000 out and put a tenant in for like 25,000 for year 1, 30,000 for year 2, monthly. Yeah. So they're paying me 25,000 a month for the first year, 30,000 for the second year. So not only am I depreciating this asset to save on a ton on taxes, not paying taxes, took 800,000 out, and cash flowing like crazy. So it just ended up being one of those like, deal of all deals. that just prints money. You know, it's a really cool deal that I'm really proud of.
So in honor of Jerry Norton being out in a tropical location, this is a good time to stop the video and tell you guys that for some reason, I thought I could accomplish all of these interviews in 3 days. So after losing my passport, nearly missing my flight, and spending hours going through customs while still trying to make this video, I can happily say I finally made it here to beautiful Cancun. And right before I jumped in the pool, I just got off the phone with Sharad. He's the owner of ReSimpli, which is the CRM platform I use. And hopefully you guys are feeling super inspired to get your first deal. And I'm excited to say that he just offered a special discount for my audience to their 30-day challenge designed to do just that. It's a great offer. Not only are they going to give you guys access to their platform, but they're also going to give you live coaching as well as other resources and a special discount for you just because you're a part of the Lili Invests audience. So I'm about to dip in this pool. You guys go hit that link in the description to sign up before all the spots are taken. And let's get back to these interviews.
What's up, you guys? My name is Gabby. I'm the Real Estate Bae, and I am located in St. Louis, Missouri, and I help new and first-time investors find and fund profitable real estate in the St. Louis market.
How did you, as someone who helps people get their first deals, how did you get your first deal?
Yeah, so long story less long, I was unemployed in 2019, and I knew I didn't want to be subject to somebody firing me again. So I got fired, and I went to Google and I typed in how to make money without a 9-to-5. Real estate came up. Then I typed in how to make money on your own time, and being a realtor came up. And so I kept Googling because I was like, surely I'm not doing real estate. And I kept Googling, and real estate, investor, investments, landlording, everything around what I currently do just kept coming up, no exaggeration. And so after maybe 3 to 6 months of disobedience and being poor, I eventually said, okay, I got $22,000 in the bank. Let me see how far this will take me, because if being unemployed, if my rent is $1,000, I'm gonna be homeless in less than 22 months. So I took $10,000 and I went to Zillow.com and I typed in search properties under 10K, and I visited all the properties and I landed on the one that I bought.
Okay, so you gotta be lying, because nobody has 22K in their bank account, especially after being fired. And there's nowhere in the world that you could buy a house for $10,000 down. So what's T?
No, it wasn't down. It was the full purchase.
Snap. Okay, even more. I need the T.
Yeah. Yep, full purchase price. So St. Louis this is why we built the business here. People ask me, help me here. I don't have to help you anywhere. I can just help you here, because St. Louis is historically known for undervalued real estate because of systematic racism, which is a whole different conversation. But in 2020, I bought this property in 2020. There were properties online for $8,000, $11,000, $10,000. So I had 10 grand. I didn't know that was inexpensive until I went to social. And people were like,
wait, the year of our Lord 2020, like 2020?
Yes.
What'd you do with it? You bought it, what type of condition was it in? And then how did it come out for you?
So my favorite thing about the house, I think why I landed on this one, was that the owner was living in it. So I knew that it was past occupancy for permits purposes. I knew that it was livable and safe. It had to have running water, electricity, and then there were window units for HVAC. So I said, okay, at least I know that this one, I'm starting off livable and safe versus a full gut. So over 88 days of the summer of 2020, I renovated the property myself. I went in, I did drywall, I tore down cabinets, I changed out doors, I changed out door knobs, the whole thing. Got the little thing rented a lot of tools from Home Depot and redid the floors, because there's original wood floors in there. Repainted the deck. There's a big swing in the front yard, repainted that. I was in there for 88 days straight. And so listed it on Section 8, and we still have the property to this day, and it cash flows a little under $1,000 a month.
How'd you get the 22K? Was that like, were you a great saver? Did you hit the lotto? What happened?
So I think like God literally had me in season. So I was in a season for the first time in my life of saving. And so me and my fiance at the time were saving, which we thought was a lot of money, which I guess maybe is a lot for 22K. We were saving every single month and just going over finances and really saving. And then boom, we got fired and we had the 22K. So before that, I couldn't hold maybe $1,000 in the bank account. So literally I was set up to buy this property, right? So yeah, we literally saved from a 9-to-5 job. Yeah, I love the first deal for sure. The next one, or the one that's would probably stand out, because I think it just brings out the hustler in you, is we got our next deal we got the keys to the next deal for $200. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, all brick property in St. Louis. The value is probably about $75K, and I got it for $200 just off of hustle. And so somebody DM'd me and said, hey, I see what you're doing on social media. My friend wants to sell a property. He's not from here. So I went to the property, I met him there, and I said, how much will you sell this for? He's like, make me an offer. Meanwhile, my friend had already told me what he wanted. And so I told him I'd give you $200 for the keys, and then I'll pay it off, no interest, over 12 months. And I gave him $200, and he gave me the keys to the property and the deed. So,
and how much did you say you paid off over that 12 months?
12K.
12K, so $1,000 a month.
Yep, we did about $1,000 a month. Yep, it was 12K all in. Once it was done, I paid my lawyer to type everything up and everything. So we did it the right way, the way you should. Yeah, that was probably my favorite deal, because I think people get deals or they don't know how to open their mouth. Like a closed mouth won't get fed. And I'm like, I'm finna see how low I can get this for, right?
What's up, man?
What's going on?
Nothing much. How are you?
I'm good. Where you at?
I'm in Cancun.
Oh, wow, that don't look like an office to me.
Nah, man, not today. Not today.
My name is Iregbu. I'm here in Houston, Texas, and I'm a real estate investor, 8 years now. Primarily focused on creative finance, but we do have a wholesale company that employs 16.
Awesome. Any specific type of creative finance?
Subject to seller finance, and really like the foundation. All right, so first deal, at the time when I first started, they had this company called Z-Buyer, which was a lead service provider. You pay like a monthly subscription, they give you leads, and they only allow like 2 people in the area to have like a subscription. They'll give leads to 1 investor and 1 realtor. So this guy picked up the phone. His name was, I think, Will, like Hancock or something. Older gentleman. I told him, I'd give him $100,000 cash based on the comps I ran. And the scariest thing in the world happened. He accepted it. Palms started sweating. I didn't know how I was going to get the money. I went to my realtor friend and told her, hey, I want to put this property on the market to find a buyer. She said, you can't do that. This is not your house. She called the escrow officer. Escrow officer came, looked at my contract and said, well, technically in this contract, it allows him to do so. Had it on the market for probably took about, I would say 45 days to find a buyer, but it took about 4 months to close. The buyers were FHA buyers. The lender wouldn't accept an assignment. They had to actually go under contract with my seller, which I let them, and I didn't know what else to do to protect myself. So anyway, the deal ended up closing. I showed up to the title company and asked for my money. They said, who are you? You're not on the HUD. You're not owed anything. The seller, luckily, he just respected the hustle. He basically said, well, we were supposed to close on this day. You didn't close on that day, so I'm gonna subtract this much. Then you asked for another extension, so I'm gonna subtract this much. I think it's fair to give you $4,800. So he wrote me a personal check at the closing table, which he didn't have to, just because, he was a older investor that had retired. And he cut me a $4,800 check. So it wasn't an assignment, it wasn't a memo release. It was just you know what, man, I respect the hustle, bro. Here's your check. Go. Yeah, probably a deal that just closed earlier this month on the 5th. It's probably one of my favorites of all time.
Can you tell us about it? Like, how did you get it? What'd you make? Why do you like it so much?
Yeah, so I liked it because, more so from my student standpoint, it was one of my students. He called me up. He said, hey, Brian, man, I got this deal, man. Her house goes into auction in 8 days. It's in Pasadena, Maryland. So my student's in Maryland. I'm here in Texas. So he said, man, it goes to auction in 8 days. Man, this is going to be my first creative finance deal. I don't know what to do with it, man. Can you help me? And he said, man, my contractor that has bought some deals from me in the past and fixed up my property. He says he wants it, but he's kind of jacking around. I only have 8 days before she loses the house. And he said, he did tell me that he's going to hook me up with a judge that's also a big time investor in the area, and I'm gonna see what happens. He gets in touch with the judge. The judge is very condescending, kind of counting his pockets, trying to squeeze out more money out of the deal so my student can make less. He said, I just don't really have a good feeling about this guy, man. The seller calls my student and said, this guy came by my house, you know, some fast talker looking for me to sign paperwork and everything. And yeah, I just thought I wanted to let you know. I mean, I really didn't really get a good feeling with this guy. I don't want to do business with him. Do you know anything about this? So my student finds out that the judge / big time investor in that area tried to snake him. So integrity issue right there. So at this point, he's panicking. He's like, man, we only have like seven days. What can I do? I said, look, I'll fund the deal for you. Right? This is the type of return I need in order to fund the deal. So basically, we ended up closing on that deal. And I'll go back for more details if you want, but we ended up closing that deal, start to finish 90 days. My student makes $98,000 on that deal, and I make $30,000.
So how'd you help him get it closed? Like, did you purchase it and pay him a wholesale fee?
No. So what we did is we did what is called a subtail. We purchased it subject to, we sold it on the retail market. So the seller, basically, she was in pre-foreclosure, 7 days to auction. She had already had 2 loan modifications, which she defaulted on. So the bank was not willing to work with her anymore. So what we did is once we verified what was on title, which was about 4 liens, there was her primary mortgage on title. There was 2 HUD liens on title from her loan modifications, and there also was a utilities lien. What we did is once we found out it had enough equity, we told the seller that, hey, we'd be able to get her $15,000, right? $5,000 up front and $10,000 when we resell the property, right? She was happy with that because she was thinking she was gonna get nothing within the next 7 days and have to just move out abruptly. So as soon as we got the confirmation, I spoke with his real estate attorney in Maryland, sent the mobile notary over there with the deed. She deeded the property over. As soon as she deeded the property over, I wired $33,000 to her bank to get the loan back and get standing. Helped her start looking for, my student helped her because I never went to Maryland to look at the property, of course. Then my student was helping her find another place. When she found a place, gave her $5,000 up front, all right? And that was in writing, that was part of the agreement. She moved out of the property, now we have a vacant property, okay? The renovation cost about $22,000. We broke it up in a scope of work in 3 different draws. I did for my student, I said 7,000, 8,000, 7,000. 7,000 was the start. Once we get past midpoint, I did another wire for 8,000. Once it was completely finished, did the last wire for 7,000. We put it on the market at 405. Within 48 hours, we had 13 offers. One was 15,000 above asking price. We also did a flat fee listing, so we didn't have to pay a full 3% on the seller's agent side. So that cut some costs as well. Buyers came in at 420, and they closed. We were supposed to close on August the 8th. They actually closed 3 days early. The total net profit was $127,000. $102,000 went back to me, and he got a money wire for $98,000.
My name is David Lecko. I'm in Austin, Texas, and I do buy and hold real estate investing.
And I've also heard that you kind of have like this connection with a software company. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so on my own journey through finding a really good rental property, I did Driving for Dollars, and I ended up building an app that's used by thousands of other investors called Deal Machine for driving for dollars and comps and direct mail and skip tracing. And we've added to it since I first got my first deal, Driving for Dollars with it. And that's a primary focus for me right now. It was something that I found that was 600 square feet. It had this blue tarp over the roof. This was in 2017 when I was just getting started. I ended up getting a call from this guy, and he was telling me on the phone that he wanted me to come give him an offer on his house. And I just knew, I was like, it has to be this tiny house with a blue tarp because it's just stuck in my mind. But it was like months later, and I ended up buying it for $4,782. I got no interest credit cards to do a $60,000 renovation, and the value's gone up to $134,000. So I've made some good appreciation, and I've had it rented out for, it's now at $1,200. So that's gone up too. So it's been a really good deal for me. I think I've made $89,000 on that little tiny house.
That's awesome. Okay, so a couple questions. I like to dive deep into these deals.
Yeah.
So when you were driving for dollars, you see this house, how did you get in touch with the owner?
Yeah, so what I did was, I had kind of made this little widget on my phone for myself that now became the app Deal Machine. But I could pin the house, it would tell me who owned it, and then it would have a button so I could press and it would send mail to him. And so that would repeat every 21 days. And it took 7 postcards for him to call me back. So I remember counting that. So it took some time, a few months had passed by, but then he finally had some surgery and he was like, man, I got to move into an assisted living place. I really need to get rid of this house. And I think he fully expected me to bulldoze it. And maybe that would have been a good option. I don't know. It was just such a small house, but I fixed it all up. And whenever I was done, I actually went back and I picked him up from his nursing home, stayed in touch with him, and I drove him back through so he could see his old house and what it looked like now. And I think it was really awesome for him and me. It was fun. I didn't even consider it a deal at the time because I was going to live in the property. So I didn't consider it a deal, but this ended up being my best deal. Was the first house that I ever bought. And it was a 5-bedroom, 1,800 square foot house. So not a big house, but it was like all bedrooms, which is perfect for house hacking. So I lived in 1 bedroom and I rented out the other 3 for $550 each, which almost covered my entire payment. And I bought it for $194,000 with $5,000 down because I had that first time home buyer loan. And it's appreciated like crazy. And the rents have also gone up 50% since then. So now it's worth $325 and the rents are $2,800. And so it's been a really great property for me.
My name is Kierra. I'm located in Houston, Texas. And I started off with Airbnb about 3 years ago with the arbitrage method where I basically sublet from owners, but I realized that we were throwing a lot of money away with renting. So we decided to get into ownership. So now we have a mix of arbitrage and ownership. But with the ownership side of things, well, I don't want to go too far, but with the ownership side of things, we try to do the BRRRR strategy. But for the long-term rental part, we do short-term rentals because the income is just way better.
So for those of you who don't know, Kierra is using a strategy called Airbnb arbitrage. And what that is basically the idea that you don't need to own a property in order to Airbnb it. Now you do have to have permission from the owner. So I'm at a hotel right now, but let's just imagine that this was an apartment complex and they were having a lot of vacancies because maybe it was in a season where people weren't really renewing their leases or moving in. And so people who do Airbnb arbitrage oftentimes approach the owners or the managers of buildings like these and ask them if, hey, can I pay that rent? Let's say the rent is $1,500. Can I pay that rent, furnish the property and put it on Airbnb? I'll take care of the property, I'll take care of all the maintenance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, pay you the rent, and then anything I make on top of that is good to go. Now that might sound pretty unrealistic, and some people do it with apartment complexes. Some people just do it with regular landlords. And I actually called up quite a few landlords and got 1 or 2 to say, yeah, I'd be down for that. And so Kierra is able to make an entire business out of doing this, and it's called arbitrage because she doesn't actually need to own the apartments or the properties that she's putting on Airbnb. She just has an agreement with the owner, she pays them their rent, and then she keeps the profit on top because Airbnb is oftentimes much more profitable than a long-term tenant.
Tell me about the first arbitrage deal. Like, what made you want to use that strategy, and like, how did that come about? How much did you make?
Oh, okay. So I was once upon a time in Forex, and one of my mentors, she was doing Airbnb, and I think during the Atlanta Super Bowl, she made like $60,000 or something in a month. And I'm like, girl, show me what you're doing. Like, this is more than my accounting degree would ever pay me. So she showed me, and she was like, just tell the apartment complexes what you're doing, that you're doing Airbnb, and get their approval, make sure in the lease it says you can do it, and you're good to go. But for the number side of things, I spent $3,500 on furnishing. We got our first month free because back then it was just easy to get first months free. And that was like 3 years ago. So the first month we made a profit because it was the first month free. We furnished really quickly. So we made like on average, like 7,000 to 8,000 a month profit on this 1-bed, 1-bath apartment. Still can't
That's
believe.
awesome.
Now, before I get all these investors to share their secret sauce that sets them apart, when I returned from Cancun, I got the chance to talk with some really big hitters in our industry, and I especially enjoyed my conversation with Pace Morby, where he told me some of the best stories from his career. So let's roll that tape.
My name is Pace Morby. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been here for quite a while. My experience in real estate was starting out as a contractor, got into fixing and flipping, wholesale, and now this year, my business consists of 9 different businesses. We have owned title and escrow businesses, lending businesses, Airbnb businesses, and we'll close out on close to 1,000 doors in multifamily this year alone, all using creative finance. I remember the first deal I did was with a lady named Janie Munson. It was a mailer. Okay, so I sent a mailer. I didn't even know what a mailer was. Somebody told me, just send out mailers. So I sent out a mailer. I get a call back. It was literally the 3rd call I got. The first 2 I missed, and I could never get a hold of them. 3rd call I got, lady calls me. She says, hey, I'm retiring. I'm going to move up to Oregon, and I'm done being a school teacher. I was like, okay, cool. So on my drive up there, I call somebody, the same person that told me to send out postcards, and I said, dude, I don't even know what to offer this lady. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, you told me just to get started, but I don't even know what I'm doing. So I go up there, and he says, offer her $150,000. That's the max you can pay on this house. So you can imagine, this is a long time ago, because the average sales price in Phoenix now is $450. So this is a long time ago. And I get up there and I start talking to Janie, and she says, I asked this wonderful question. I said, so I imagine you're probably talking to other investors. Why haven't you already sold your house? She says, well, I've got an offer at 165 and it's not high enough. And I go, okay. Well, I can tell you, I can't help you. Like, I can't get that high. I'm so sorry. I can't get that high. And she says, okay, no problem. Have a great day. Thanks for being honest. Everybody else was trying to beat up my house and try and whittle me down and all this kind of stuff. So as I'm leaving the house, I turn around and I go, is there anything I can help you with? I know you're trying to move up to Oregon. Like, I've got construction crews and guys that can help you load your truck. She's like, you want to help me? Like, even though you're not buying my house? I said, yeah, I want to help you. She goes, you're serious? You want to help me? I go, yep, I want to help you. So she takes me to the backyard. She shows me these freaking humongous bunnies. And she says, if you can find a home for these things, I'll be super grateful. So I call my mom on speakerphone. No joke. This is literally my first deal. And I call my mom on speakerphone. My mom is a mother of 12 kids. She's had goats and chickens. Like, she's a farm girl. And so I call my mom. I go, Mom, can you help this lady, Janie, rehome these bunnies? My mom's there in 45 minutes, takes these bunnies, rehomes the bunnies, and I leave. 2 weeks later, I get a call from Janie, and she goes, Pace, I want to sell my house to you. I go, Janie, I told you I can't pay anything more than, I can't go up to the 165 that you already got an offer on. She goes, I don't care. Whatever the number is that you're willing to offer me, I want to sell my house to you. I said, I'm clueless as to what's going on here. And she says, you are the only person that took the time to care about my situation. Everybody else is trying to renegotiate with me, fight with me, and they're just treating me in an abusive manner. So whatever your number is, I'm sure you're going to be reasonable. Bring a contract and let's sign today. I didn't even know how to sign a contract. So my wife was a real estate agent, still is, and she knew how to sign a contract. So I took my wife up there and we get the contract, but I had never done an assignment contract before. So the guy who gave me the number, I assigned it to him and I made $25,000 on my first deal.
And was it that 150 that you got the property
I gave her the 150, yeah. Like, last night I got a seller finance deal, 0 down, 0% interest. And it was because I understood the lady was retired, similar situation. And she had one thing she cared about. It was letting her tenants, who's been in the property for 10 years, she said, I want to sell the property to somebody that will let my tenants stay in the property for another 2 years. I go, no problem. Let's figure out something that works for both. And I'll put in the contract, your tenants can stay there for 2 more years. And I won. So I'm just always looking for the bunnies. And I'm so grateful to Janie Munson because I learned that lesson on my first deal.
That's so awesome. Shout out to your mom.
Oh, shout out to my mom. She's a saint.
That's clutch. That's super clutch.
But the first deal that actually changed everything for me was actually a deal that was my truck. I don't know if you've ever heard the F-150 story.
I haven't.
Oh my gosh, it's so great. So one day I get a F-150 and it hit like 320,000 miles. And I go, I got to take this truck and get it out of my company. It just doesn't make sense. It's starting to have more issues than what it's worth, kind of like a rental property, right? It's like starting to have more issues. Maybe it's time to sell this one, liquidate, move on to the next deal, and 1031 into the next deal. So I was like, I'll sell this truck, put the money towards a down payment on a newer truck. So I put it on Craigslist, but before I go to Craigslist, I check, what do I check? I check Kelley Blue Book, just like a homeowner would check Zillow, And my Zillow price on my truck, or my Kelley Blue Book price, was $5,000. I'm like, $5,000? Like, that's not, are you kidding me? So I belligerently put my truck on Craigslist for $10,000. And why is this so important? I'm gonna tell you the punchline in a little bit, but there's a very important parallel here. That $10,000, I of course didn't sell that truck. It sat on Craigslist for 3 months. My wife comes into my office and she says, "Hey, sweetheart, like, I have to drive around this truck every day. Is there any way you can just sell this silly truck?" I'm like, "What do you want me to do? I don't, this thing's worth to me more than $5,000. And she's like, "It's not worth more than $5,000 to anybody else. The buyer determines the price, not you." Right? And this lesson was important for me because it obviously showed up later in real estate. So what happened is she goes, "You're the most creative guy I know. You always have a creative solution." She's like, "Why don't you come up with like selling your truck on payments?" And I go, "Okay." So Lily, I go back to Craigslist. I change one thing. I literally just changed my F-150. I go, F-150, $10,000, will take payments. I had to turn the Craigslist ad off in like 30 minutes. I was overwhelmed by calls. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm onto something. This is the most genius thing ever. I sold that truck for $12,500 with $1,000 down and $350 payments every single month. And I was like, holy moly. I untapped, like, it was like exiting the matrix. I was like in a whole new world, right? So now when a seller says, what is creative finance, or what are terms, or what is subject to, or what's seller finance, I literally tell them my F-150 story. That's how I explain sub to. That's how I explain seller finance. And every single time they get it. And that's why I'm so good at closing creative finance deals, is because I sold my truck on creative finance 10 years ago.
My name is Ryan Dossey. I'm a buy and hold, fix and flip. I've lent money. I've sold properties with owner financing. Effectively, like everything in real estate, from single family to land to small multifamily. We're actively looking for like some mobile home park and self-storage stuff, but for the most part, kind of the like 30 unit and below space is what we've played with. Currently live in Pensacola, Florida. My wife's a Navy psychologist, so they tell us to jump. We say how high, but my main business is actually in Indianapolis, where she went to grad school. So I have a whole like full-fledged team there. They average anywhere from like 5 to 10 deals a month, depending on the month. And cool thing is, I haven't seen hundreds of deals we've done. I just started asking dumb questions. You can find my old threads from back in like 2014, 15 that are like, I have money, but no credit, or I have credit, but no money. What do I do? And that was kind of where I heard about wholesaling. And a coworker and I bought 3,000 yellow letters from a vendor that was on BiggerPockets back then. Split it, my half went on a credit card that I couldn't afford to pay off. And we just hit list source absentee owners with equity, single family, 35 to 100%. And one of the calls that came in was a elderly woman who had bought a house for her son. Son cheated on his wife, kicked her out, and wasn't helping mom with any of the costs. So she was
Nice
like,
guy.
yeah, totally. Right? She was like, my kid sucks. I was like, I'll evict him for you, right? But wasn't helping her with any of the costs. So she's paying taxes, she's paying insurance, she had a small mortgage on the place, and she's like, I'm on Social Security. This is literally bleeding me dry. We knew like nothing. So we like 75% rule. We went real low because we were like, how do you even value something like this? It was on a gravel road. It was on septic. It was in an unincorporated county.
Yeah.
And we ended up getting the place under contract for like $35,000. which in hindsight is an incredible deal. I looked this house up a couple months back and it had sold for like 250,000 remodeled. But again, almost a decade since then. But that particular deal, we put it on Zillow for sale by owner. We know nothing, right? There's no buyer's list. Had it on Craigslist. And we had somebody that walked through it and they were like, hey, we're new fix and flippers. We're funded by our grandma and we want to buy this house. And we were like, okay. And they were like, so we have the cash with us. Do we just like give? And we were like, no, I think it has to go through like title company. And they're like, okay, well, they handed us $1,000 in cash. Like, here's earnest money. And we were like, what do we do with this? And then it was like, okay, find a title company, figure it out. When it was all said and done, we ended up selling the place for $47,500, so $12,500 spread. After we paid off our marketing costs, we were like right at about $10,000 net. So that was my first one. We had a deal in Kentucky that was a totally virtual like wholesale. So what we were doing is getting properties on like a lease option, like owner finance, and then we would do a little bit of remodel, list the property on the market, buy it prior to close. So then we were the actual like seller, but we were using kind of the lease option structure to control the property, do a light remodel, get it on the MLS, and then that way financing was easy. We'd then buy it and then go sell it to like a retail buyer. So we had one of these in Kentucky, and it was a nice house that kind of like maybe needed a lot, depending on how picky somebody was. It was on a golf course. And the guy had like job transfer, like, hey, I need to go pretty quick. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was like $180,000 is what we locked it up for. And we ended up thinking it would sell for like somewhere in the low to mid twos. Ran it by a local realtor, and he was like, you could sell this for 300 grand, like as it sits. In the back of my mind, I've got this guy's going to be pissed when he sees we did nothing to his house and we sold it for 300K. So I kind of have this like anxiety about this deal of like, it's way better than I thought. It like, we're in business to make money. We're real upfront with our sellers, in that like, we're buying your house to try to make a profit. Normally it's not this big of one, right? And he hit us up the day it listed. Like I saw the message come into ReSimpli, and I was like, I didn't even want to click on it, right? Clicked on it, I was like, hey, saw you guys listed the house. I hope you get every bit of that. And I was like, what? Like I was expecting why didn't I do this myself? And, I think I replied with something to the effect of, I'm not quite sure that we will, but, we'll see. And he's like, no, seriously, you guys stopped the bleeding on the mortgage and stuff on this property for me, where I was able to go start my new job. We ended up selling for high 200s when it was all said and done. After private lender fees, closing costs, realtor commissions, we netted like $85,000.
My name is Brian Davilla. I am a 31-year-old real estate investor from Southern California. I have flipped, wholesaled, sold over 300 properties. I own Airbnbs and a bunch of long-term rentals. Well, I started off as a real estate agent. So I was helping people buy and sell houses. And then my first investment deal was a flip that I found from cold calling. And I found a private money lender to put up 100% of the capital, and we flipped the house and split the profits.
Okay, so let's go into both of those. So what did it take to become an agent in terms of like, did you have to like go to school for it? Did it cost you money? And then do you remember what your commission was on your first deal as an agent?
Yeah, so I became an agent in Las Vegas first, and it probably cost me a couple $1,000s, I think, to go to the school, take the test, get the license and all that stuff. And I believe that my first real estate commission check was about like $3,000, but that was the most money I've ever made, because I used to make like $7 an hour. So to get a check for $3,000 was a lot.
And how long did it take from like you getting licensed as an agent to finding that first deal as an agent?
I remember I got licensed in July and I closed my first deal in October.
Okay, very cool. So what was your transition like from being an agent to somehow finding a private lender and doing your first legit investor deal?
Yeah, so as a real estate agent, I realized that I did not have control of my time. And if a buyer or a seller would call me at 8 p.m. or on a Sunday or on a Saturday, I had to take those calls and go show them the house or service those people. And I realized that I didn't want to live the rest of my life like that. So I decided, hey, you know what? I need to pivot. And I learned about real estate investing and flipping houses from Ryan Pineda. He kind of showed me how to start looking for deals. And on my first flip, I made like $50,000. And after that, I was hooked. I was like, all right, like, you know, I don't need to do a lot of these to be financially comfortable. So that's what got me into flipping houses. My best deal is, you know, I've made 6 figures on deals. I've made millions of dollars as a real estate investor, but my best deal ever was on the 4th of July in 2016. I was finally an agent for 2 years and I was like, man, I finally got my pre-qual letter. I was like, oh baby, I got my pre-qual letter. And my wife, she didn't believe in real estate. And I'm only sharing this because I know some people are going to experience this also. I was like, babe, we could buy this 4-plex and every unit rents out for $800. We could buy it for $200,000. Like, I'm going to make whatever. Like, this is going to be awesome. She was like, we don't even own a house. We live with my parents. But I was like, all right, well, she doesn't get it. So on the 4th of July, I went on the MLS. I put in an offer, got it accepted that night. And I was so happy and scared at the same time, even though I have already been in real estate for 2 years, that deal changed my life. If I would have never bought that one deal that I make $500 on, all this other crap wouldn't have happened. So that's why I always tell people, like, your first deal, you're not going to get rich, but you can get rich because you did your first deal. And your first deal doesn't need to be a home run. Sometimes you just need to get on base, right? So probably just my first rental.
Now, I forgot to have Brent introduce himself. We started talking about his super dope YouTube setup, but Brent is somebody that I started watching super early in my wholesaling career, and he just has such an energy about him. And, you know, at the end of the day, he's Mr. Talk to People, so I'm gonna let him talk to y'all.
Mr. TTP himself, what was your first real estate deal?
Oh, I love this. So my first wholesale deal was in May of 2013, and it was a 89-year-old woman named Margaret. And I didn't even talk to Margaret. I was out door knocking on the street in Phoenix, right over here off of 42nd Street. And I actually ended up at the end of the street. I knocked on the door. The gal came out and she said she didn't want to sell her house, but she said, you know, I'm a caretaker for the house a few down. And let me call her real quick. She lives in New York. I know that she wants to sell the property, but it's got a bunch of stuff in it, needs a lot of work. Let me see if she would consider a cash offer. And so she came back, Lili, and she gave me the name and phone number for Margaret. And so I called her instantly because I was like, you know, I'll just call her when I get back to the office. And then I was like, no. I got to strike while the iron's hot. You know, it's May in Phoenix. I'm door knocking. I'm sweating. Let's get this going, right? And so I called her right away, had a really good conversation with her, talked to her attorney, talked to everybody that was like involved in it, and ended up putting the property under contract. And I brought it over to the guy that owned my real estate brokerage because I've had a real estate license for a long time, and I knew he was an investor. And he's like, yeah, sell me that deal and I'll give you 3%. And I was like, this is great. This is fantastic. And so he closed on the deal. Well, he didn't close on it. He actually assigned it for $30,000. He gave me $4,500 because the purchase price was $150,000. And I remember looking down at the settlement statement and I was like, you're not on here. Like, where's your company name? You're not closing on this? And he's like, no, I sold it. And I was like, what do you mean you sold it? I was like, you don't even own it. How do you sell something you don't own? He goes, no, I sold the contract. And I'm telling you, that was the moment of like, oh my God, what are you talking about? You didn't even have to have cash for this? No, you didn't even, you're not closing on this at all? You didn't have to go to the bank? You didn't have to get a loan? No, I just sold it to my other guy. I know that he wanted to do it. So that was my first like step into, oh, this is what wholesaling really is. And that was incredible.
And you weren't mad that you made 4,500 when he made 30K?
No, because it was like the door kind of got like opened a little bit. Like I felt like I learned something big here. And I was like, so he paid you 30,000 just to give him the contract? And he goes, yeah, it's called wholesaling. And I was like, what is wholesaling? What is this whole process? I ended up selling him 3 deals for $92,000 that he made. And I made like 15,000 before I was like, okay, I got this down. I know how to do this. I'll tell you the most memorable one that like I talk about because it like really breaks your brain, I think. I had this lead. We had called this this homeowner on a tired landlord list, right? So she's owned this rental property for a long time, and her tenants had just moved out. And my acquisition manager, Allie, went to this property, and she called me and she's like, "You need to get down here right now." And I was like, this is random. Like, why? Like, this is your job. Like, lock up the deal. She's like, no, this woman wants like a really low a price for her house. I need you to come here and make sure I'm doing this okay. So I get down there, Lili, and the woman goes, yeah, I'm excited to sell the house. I'm done with it. And I said, okay, so how much do you want? She said $9,000. And so I remember looking it up on Zillow before I went there to kind of get an idea. I was like, maybe she wants 150, 160, because on Zillow it was worth 220. Okay. It was worth $220,000. And I was like, okay, I'm not dealing with somebody that has mental, faculties here. It's a real issue, whatever. And I go, well, and I showed her Zillow. I go, on Zillow, it's $220,000. If you were to put this on the market right now, how much do you think you could get? She goes, Brent, I've been a real estate broker for 30 years. I know without a doubt I could sell this property for $200,000 on the market right now. And I said, well, why are you giving me $191,000 worth of equity? She goes, I just want you to win. And I go, you want me to win? And you've had this property for a long time. She goes, I just want you to win. I don't care. I want this done. I want it out of my hands. I just want $9,000 for this property. Well, does that not break your, like, I'm telling you, like, some people don't care about the money. And this happens to us about every 90 days, not that size. That's like a ridiculous story, but that's real life. But truly, that we get massive deals once every 90 days because we just talk to a lot of people. And so that one like really shifted everything. I remember like being okay. I talked to her attorney. I talked to her priest. Her priest was there because she's like real religious. Like I talked to everybody and they're like, she only wants $9,000. I was like, this is crazy. This is going to go to my head big time. This is going to change some things.
I would say my special sauce when it comes to investing in Airbnbs is really probably like me and my team. And my team, it's grown since we started, but initially it was me, my wife, and her cousin, which is our third partner. And each one of us had a certain skill set that really made it easy for us. When we talk about the time, ability, and desire, we were able to check every single one of those boxes when it came to Airbnb. So I'm really good at like analyzing deals and getting the tools and the systems and the software set up. And, obviously I have a platform. So for us, like raising money to find money partners for these deals is relatively easy. My wife is super creative. So when it comes to designing the property, she knocks that out of the park every single time. She comes from like an events background. So just like making everything like super fun and exciting for the guests, she's great at. Our third partner, he's really good at like, finding the best contractor or getting the best rates or doing all these other things. So like when you put the three of us together, we're like this, I don't know, this like golden triangle of like Airbnb operation. So I honestly think it's our team and our unique blend of abilities that makes us do so well.
A lot of what we do as wholesalers is we are transacting on a transactional basis, right? So if you're doing direct to seller, you go and you build rapport with a homeowner, you follow up, you finally get this deal under contract, and that cost to contract after all of the money you spent on lists, skip tracing, follow-up, CRMs, wages for staff, all the things. I've been calculating, at least here in Phoenix, the average is about $7,000 to $13,000 cost per contract. That's our average cost. And then the deal is done. You sell the contract, and there's nothing to be done after that. So I think that's broken. My secret sauce is relationships. So all of our deals, first and foremost, Keighley, which is my company, we've franchised in 132 markets. So we're the largest wholesaler that exists in the country. And our model is wholesalers and agents. So all of our deal flow come from other wholesalers and agents. And what we bring to the table is distribution. So our secret sauce is our capacity to build the most incredible buyers list that exists. And in a time like now where deals aren't selling, where the market shifted and hedge funds have started to disappear and people really need to find a better paying buyer, that's when we thrive. And
I think that I like a challenge, and I like to develop something. So I love like building a business and like putting it all together. But then once it's like built, like the day-to-day stuff, yeah, like get away from me, like somebody else do that. But I love building something. And I think that I can look at something and I can be like, okay, this is how you would piece it together. And this is how you would do that. And it kind of goes to properties too. And why I'm kind of transitioning to cabins and campgrounds and kind of that outdoor hospitality is because I love looking at a property and I can like envision, okay, this is an income stream here, this is an income stream here, this is an income stream here. And just kind of like my brain putting those things together, I can very easily visualize all of that. And I think that's an advantage.
I grew up, lower class, single mom, all that stuff. Everyone's heard that story so many times. But because I was not good at school, like literally struggled reading, like just didn't like I wasn't book smart, but I am good at listening. And I am good at connecting with people and building rapport and understanding where they're coming from, where I feel like smarter people struggle with that. Where I could meet someone, build rapport, and come up with the solution to buy, sell, or wholesale their house, where other people are too analytical. They're scared. They don't know what to say. They don't know what contracts to fill out, where I don't care. I'm not afraid to look stupid. I'm not afraid to fail, because I used to work for minimum wage for 16 hours a day, right? That sucks, right? That sucks. That sucked bad. But now I can make $10, $20, $40, $50,000 on one transaction just talking to people. So I think that's my superpower. I was freaking broke and worked at a dead-end job, and I saw that lifestyle where some people, they have like a 6-figure job. So it's kind of hard to like go out there and hustle when you're already making like $100,000 a year.
I think that if you understand progress, not perfection, you'll win in this business. Because I think a lot of people get stuck in the education loop. I think a lot of people get stuck with paralysis by analysis, or just procrastination, or whatever else, right? The 3 Ps: paralysis by analysis, perfectionism, and procrastination. And I think that if you can recognize that, you can destroy it, and just realize like the little wins make the big wins happen. Like getting in your car and going and driving and writing down the addresses of ugly houses in your neighborhood, in your area, in your community, that's a win. Getting out of your car and knocking on their door, that's a win. Like getting their phone number and calling them up, that's a win. These are like little wins that stack up to the big ones. So I think that you look at your day and you go, okay, what's the progress that I can make today to either get a lead closer to making a decision or getting a deal closed or learning something different about this industry. Progress, not perfection. And obviously it's on my shirt. I wear this shirt for the last 4 years every single day because, talking to people, I think, is the toughest part of our business. Talking to strangers about real estate when we're getting started is very scary to a lot of people. It's very intimidating. You feel very awkward. You feel very off. But then you realize that the more that you do it, the more you understand, everybody pretty much is the same. All the sellers are pretty much the same. If you find out about the condition of the property, their timeline to sell that property, their motivation to sell it, and their price, we call it the 4 pillars, then you can have a conversation with anybody about real estate, as long as you kind of use that as the skeleton of that conversation.
The first piece of secret sauce that it can't go without being said is that I am a child of God. I am connected to God. And so when I was fired, I always like to tell the story because people think that overnight success is real. 2019, I was fired on the hospital bed with my son. He was declared dead at birth. They told me my son would not make it through the night. Do you understand me? So when God restored me, like the book of Job, when he restored Job, he restored him 7-fold, 10 times fold. And so I'm in a restoration period. So that's why my business is going to hit 1 million. All my clients are going to be good. Everything connected to me, like what was connected to Job, will be restored. So that's the first piece of secret sauce. It's just obeying God and being called to the industry. I deeply feel that I'm called to real estate. The second piece of secret sauce that I use on every single deal, literally doing it as before we got on this call, every single deal I negotiate. Every single deal. And people think that negotiation starts and stops at the closing table. I start negotiations before I write anything up.
Social media, for one, which we always talk about. I'm just very active. I've kind of shared my journey, for the last 3 years. So a lot of people have seen my growth from just wholesaling to everything that we're doing. So, it's kind of created that authority in my market. And then the last 2 things is I keep my word. So if I give a wholesaler a price, I don't care what they're making, I will perform. If I tell you I'm going to close, I will close. And then last thing I would say, I'm consistent. I'm more consistent than probably I run laps around a lot of these old heads in my market just because they don't get it. The market's just changed so much. So it's if you want a deal, you have to act fast. The deal that I locked up yesterday, they were doing a showing and there was 20 investors coming and everybody's waiting. And I was just asked the guy, what do you need to make this deal happen today? And he told me and we put it together. So it's I could have waited, but why wait? If the deal works, just make it happen.
For me personally, I feel like people can read me very well. I feel like I'm just a genuine dude and people can see that. They can see that I really care because there's been a handful of deals where we've gotten a deal. We weren't the highest offer, but they just vibed with me so well because I'm basically the front end when it comes to running our business, acquisitions, basically. So they hear my voice, they see my face. I'm the one at the dinner table eating cookies, grandma's cookies and everything. I just feel like I'm able to relate with individuals on a personal level. And I feel like that separates me from other companies and individuals in our market.
I don't know if I can share it with you. Just kidding. No, I can share it. Yeah, my competitive advantage is just that I took action before knowing all the answers. My parents actually were very concerned because a lot of the people that they knew had these terrible stories where the person was kind of an accidental landlord and then the house got damaged. But I was talking with people that were successful. And I think that was a big part of my competitive advantage was taking action and having kind of on-demand access to knowledge whenever I've hit a roadblock through just some successful people that I met in my local market. I knew I could just contact them if I didn't know what to offer on this house. And so I would say I didn't wait till I knew every answer to every possible scenario that likely probably wouldn't even happen, but just taking action and then having access to somebody who's been there, done that was a huge competitive advantage for me.
I feel like with Airbnb, when people look at the numbers, you make sometimes 3 to 10 times more than you would with like a long-term rental. And if you understand hospitality, which is a whole new industry, you are in for a treat. And so my competitive advantage, in my opinion, is that I understand Airbnb and short-term rentals in a way that I don't think anyone else does. I really just, I feel like I have an eye for it. I don't attract parties. I don't attract all the negative stuff that happens that you see on social media. And I think it's because I furnish for a specific type of person, and we only get those type of people. So like the medical patients, the people who are coming in for work, we just don't have the problems that that most people see on the internet. So
my secret sauce, I feel like, and it's the reason that we have 5 businesses, is the reason all of them, I think, are doing pretty well. And it's actually having a mindset of abundance mixed with a competitive spirit. Like, you can say you have a mindset of abundance, right? Like, I can say that, and I've said that for a couple of years now, and I didn't know, like probably for 3-4 years, it's something we've been talking about. But this last 12-18 months, I feel like I've truly embodied that mindset of abundance. But I'm super competitive. So it's kind of hard, like, I want you to lose because I'm competitive, but also having a mindset of abundance. But I feel like the past 12-18 months, I've really got a good mix of that, where I can win, you can win, we can do this together. I don't have to stab you in the back to win. Like, we can both win, and there is enough out there for everybody.
Storytelling. All day long storytelling, giving people an understanding of what I'm trying to convey through a simple story. I mean, we're all barbaric. We come from caveman times. We wanted to sit around the fireplace and listen to each other talk. And, you know, it's the same thing with like the Native Americans. They drew on walls, and they didn't draw on words. They drew in pictures. And so if you can somehow convey a message to somebody through almost picture form by using your words, you will dominate everybody. You don't even have to be the highest offer. You don't have to be the most intelligent. But if you're the better storyteller and you're talking to sellers or even talking to an audience, you'll win every single time. And
I have 2. You already know what they are, and it's somewhat self-promoting.
I try to copy you, brother. I try to copy you.
But I'll throw them out. The first is definitely ballpoint. How I describe it to people, it's kind of like an apple tree, right? If you've ever gone like apple picking, anybody can get the stuff that's at the bottom of the tree. It doesn't matter if you send the worst, cheapest, crappiest form of marketing that exists. If somebody's interested in selling, they're going to call. What I get is the stuff at the top that nobody else can reach. So I get calls kind of like that deal I mentioned, where somebody's well off. They're saying, hey, I have a stack of mail. Yours is the only piece I've opened. What can you do for me? So kind of how I explain it to people, like, if you're good at negotiations at all, that right there is huge. Just, it gets you in front of more people. You tend to be dealing with people that are more affluent, that are likely to just like kind of hit the easy button. And then kind of second part to that is just answering those calls live. We own Call Porter. They put everything into ReSimpli for us, which I think you have discount codes for all of those. But my staff haven't had to take an inbound call from a seller since like 2017. So literally yesterday, I ordered 34,000 pieces of mail, and my guys are like, cool, we're going to be busy with appointments, not crap. We're going to be drowning in calls, right? So it kind of really, I feel like, makes it scalable. So kind of those 2 pieces. I think a lot of people will invest a lot of money in marketing and then drop the ball on lead intake. So those 2 paired, I mean, has made me millions of dollars and the people we work with.
It wasn't because, oh, I was like, look how I can do this, let me buy like this. I didn't have a choice. I was forced in there. Because when I first started, I had terrible credit and I didn't have a lot of cash. And so I had to learn how to buy properties with creative finance. And once you do, you almost get spoiled because you don't have to go to a bank.
You've actually done a review on this idea on your channel, but it's where I've really excelled well, and where my favorite way of getting deals is on market with real estate agents. I've just figured out how to really talk to them in the right way, build a relationship in the right way. And that's allowed me to create these relationships that end up giving, it's the golden egg that continues to give, because these agents now call me with their leads. They call me with their best deals, and I'm able to pick up deals without really doing lead gen and without spending money on marketing. And so I've laid the groundwork, and I teach how to do this quite a bit. And I give scripts and all these things that can help you learn how to create these relationships. But that's just been such an amazing strategy in my business over the years to really get phenomenal deals. Like that Burr deal I told you about, that was a pocket listing an agent brought me. I would have never gotten that deal, you know, had I not had a relationship and they brought that deal to me.
It's okay for me if I come across as like ignorant or not knowledgeable enough, you know, when I'm trying to learn something. You know, I'll not try to come off as, hey, I know this, you know, I'm like very well versed in this. Like if I don't know something, I'll be like, hey, I have no idea, you know, what you're talking. Can you please explain me? Like if it's something that I want to learn, then like I'll get really, really obsessed with it to the point it's almost like, you know, it's almost like a 1,000-piece puzzle that you're trying to solve, and I'll just get super obsessed with it. And I'm not ashamed to ask for help. Like, hey, can you show me, you know, how you did this? You know, I have no idea. I really appreciate. And, you know, like that's something I think it helped me where not having my ego involved was really good. And then, you know, always wanting to learn new things, just always wanting to make sure that I'm learning as much as I can about whatever business I was doing.
I think scaling our business. We read this book, Who Not How, that I highly recommend to everybody, and that absolutely changed our business. We have experience from network marketing and building teams, so we know how to do that. And our goal from the beginning is to build a machine that can run without us. And so, you know, we've been able to learn from Jamil because he's 20 minutes away and he has an operation that's doing, I don't know, $1 million in assignment fees a month, just in like the Arizona area. So we got to just duplicate that model, and we've really scaled. We each have managers in our different states. We have acquisition people, we brought on disposition people, you know, so we really are at a point where we can almost walk away, and that's our whole goal. So I think that's the secret sauce, that we don't try to do everything ourselves.
To be honest, there's not much left for me to say. If you're feeling inspired, go ahead and take advantage of that deal from ReSimpli for their 30-day challenge. And don't forget to check out the first episode of my brand new podcast. Links down below.